Well, thank you so much. Indeed, greetings from Brussels, White President, and our team is working in a DC. Not less important decisions are expected at the EU platform. Indeed, most of the days before leaders arrive, ministers for EU affairs of all EU countries are working on the decisions taken. I see a good perspective on making a decision on financial package, but moreover, all the next decisions would very much depend on the decision related to next step related to Ukraine's accession to EU. And following my, let's say, conversations I had here in Brussels, I am confident that at this particular point, there are enough options on a table for a discussion with leaders, which would allow to balance the interests of all parties, answer partially to the questions and concerns raised by the Hungarian government, but also address the momentum of a positive decision, which is expected on all enlargement countries, not only Ukraine. I want to remind that it's also about Georgia, Moldova, Serbia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Albania, and North Macedonia. So there are plenty of expectations over the council, but I think that the busy job between the member states has brought us to the understanding that there are pretty many options on a table, which makes me feel a bit more positive that there is the way to find a solution and avoid, from failure to take any decision over the next days.
I want to discuss in more detail the prospect of accession negotiations, but before we get there, I would like to focus on the 50 billion euros, because we know that Hungary is still blocking this disbursement for the time being. Could you just explain to us what would be the impact for Ukraine if you don't get this money?
We also understand that European Commission has reserved a number of safeguarding options, which will allow us to secure the financial support for 2024. But of course, absence of this decision would lead to a total uncertainty in terms of ability to ensure the sustainability of Ukraine's budget. And I think it would be also not a very good signal to all those other partners, including those across Atlantic, so that EU is not able to form a strategic vision of supporting Ukraine throughout the complicated circumstances of war. And I think those decisions are interconnected. It's absolutely vital to make a next step in terms of the accession to secure granting the 50 billion for the next 4 years for Ukraine. So far, there is a large consensus on a table. There is discussions taking place, for example, with the colleagues from Hungary, but there is also option to secure the financial support for Ukraine throughout the 2024. But of course, the threat of uncertainty is above all of our heads, and this is the least of what we would be happy to see if the decision is not taken.
Let's then focus on the prospect of accession talks with the EU. There's been a school of thought in Brussels in the last couple of days suggesting that what the leaders might say on Friday is, yes, we can start negotiations, official negotiations with Ukraine, but only when they've done all of the reforms. So in essence, they will only give you perhaps a political sign for the time being. Would that be enough for you?
Well, beginning of the accession talks is the beginning of all the reforms. So far, to start the accession talks, you need to meet the criteria mostly related to rule of law and fight against corruption. And only after the accession talks are started, this becomes a sustainable basis for all the reforms as you're referring. And even those countries who are member states, they are subjected to a permanent monitoring when it's related to adherence to the major principles principles and the rules of European Union. So it's a never-ending process. But at this point of time, Ukraine has laid a very strong basis and the ground for making a positive decision, because we have managed to accomplish all the agreed steps. We have managed to ensure not only passing the legislation, but fully enforcing the functioning anti-corruption framework from judiciary to the prosecution. And also we have fully managed to relaunch the judicial reform and sector related to selection of judges, which are meeting the high integrity criteria. So, and it's just not to mention everything related to tackling wasted interests, which has become a history in Ukraine already. So, so the ground for this decision is really solid, and a part of showing the commitment to reform by our actions. It's like 90% of Ukrainian people, and basically those people who stood on the Euromaidan wrapped in the European flags. This is the major guarantee of Ukraine's sustainability in terms of commitment to reform. So our homework has been done. It has been duly assessed, and the basis for political decision is there. And I just want all of us to understand that only when the accession talks are starting, the real substantial cross-sectoral massive reform agenda is shaped as part of the EU process. And without making this decision happen, that would literally be hard to get any certainty of Ukraine's reform bid in that regard.
And given the conversations you've had in Brussels over the last couple of days, what is the likelihood? Give us perhaps a percentage of you indeed expecting that the leaders will say, yes, we're ready to start accession talks with Ukraine.
I would rather refer to what you were quoting the EU President Charles Michel. It's like 26 EU member states backing up all the decisions proposed for the European Council. So it's like 90 versus 10, I would say.
That sounds relatively positive. Let's see indeed what will end up happening later on this week in Brussels. But we don't get the chance to be in Ukraine. So I would like to ask you to give us a state of play of how are things on the ground, because we're seeing that the US is not sending additional financial aid for the time being. We have this question mark about the EU itself. You're still fighting that counteroffensive. Could you describe what's the feeling in Ukraine at this stage?
Yeah, that's part of the discussions I have here in Brussels, because the decisions which are expected would have a direct impact to both sides of the front. It's either would be a signal that the world keeps on standing with Ukraine, and we can count on further support, and that seal the resolve of Ukrainian people to continue surviving and fighting as long as it takes on our side. Either it will be a signal to the other side of the front that the Russian Federation prevails in its pressure and geopolitical pressure, and while Ukraine is not failing, the support to the democratic fight of Ukraine is fading away. So of course, it causes very mixed feelings in Ukraine when we are ahead of the decision of the European leaders to not knowing whether the commitment will be sealed or disengagement will take place. The same situation, very intense in the discussions at the DC in a Congress. So, and of course, we have a lot of attention in the media in terms of the situation in the front, and constant attacks on infrastructure and attacks to the civilian infrastructure. So we need these messages to keep on being mobilized, and we need these decisions to seal our plans and to seal our commitment and to seal our unity. So I'm reaching to all the audiences which would hear this outreach from Ukraine. This does not giving you the feeling that we have in Ukraine, but also what we do for the sake of the security and democracy. And we will be standing as long as it is taking until the curtain of autocracy will fall and the democracy will prevail in Europe. And we are securing now basically the values and the way you are able to operate and make the decisions. So let this signal take place for Ukraine. We need it, and we will never be letting you down as it was always before that.
Very clear. Thank you so much for making some time to speak to us today. That was Olga Stefanishyna. She is the Deputy Prime Minister of Ukraine.
Hi, I'm Joanna Bersecci, and thank you for watching. You can check out more of our videos by clicking on the boxes on the screen. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more from CNBC International. Thank you for watching.